All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. Thomas Jefferson. Hello, I'm here on behalf of Find Info World Networks. I'm going to talk about a matter of extreme importance with you today. Did you know that the United States Army National Guard has been advertising job openings for internment specialists? A leaked U.S. Army document prepared for the Department of Defense contained shocking plans for political activists to be pacified by PSYOP officers into developing an appreciation of U.S. policies while detained in prison camps inside the United States. Has the time come when political dissidents and malcontents will no longer dare question the actions of their government? By doing so, would they risk being rounded up by internment specialists and filed away in a place where they cannot disturb a perfect Orwellian 1984-like peace? Remember, in the parlance of Newspeak, peace is war. The government simply wants to be prepared as a part of Rex 84.
Colonel North, in your work at the NSC, were you not assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster?
Mr. Chairman.
I believe that question touches upon a highly sensitive and classified area, so may I request that you not touch upon that, sir.
I was particularly concerned, Mr. Chairman, because I read in Miami papers and several others that there had been a plan developed by that same agency, a contingency plan in the event of emergency that would suspend the American Constitution. And I was deeply concerned about it and wondered if that was the area in which he had worked. I believe that it was,
may I most respectfully request that that matter not be touched upon at this stage. If we wish to get into this, I'm certain arrangements can be made for an executive session.
Rex 84, short for Readiness Exercise 1984, was written by Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, who was both National Security Council White House aide and NSC liaison to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and John Brinkerhoff, the Deputy Director of National Preparedness Programs for FEMA. It is a contingency plan developed by the United States federal government to suspend the United States Constitution, declare martial law, place military commanders in charge of state and local governments, and detain large numbers of American citizens who were deemed to be national security threats in the event that the president declared a state of domestic national emergency. So in the meantime, most Americans remain oblivious about these plans and go about their day struggling to make a living day to day, occasionally relying upon secured loans and installment loans for their daily bread. Just so you know, yes, the Re-Education Camp Manual does apply domestically to U.S. citizens. The document, entitled FM3-39.40 Internment and Resettlement Operations, was originally released on a restricted basis to the DoD in February 2010 and has been leaked online. The manual outlines policies for processing detainees into internment camps both globally and inside the United States. International agencies, like the UN and the Red Cross, are named as partners in addition to domestic federal agencies including the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA. The document makes it clear that the policies apply within U.S. territory and involve DoD support to U.S. civil authorities for domestic emergencies and for designated law enforcement and other activities, including man-made disasters, accidents, terrorist attacks, and incidents in the U.S. and its territories. The Army National Guard search for corrections officers and internment/resettlement specialists smacks of Communist China and Mao. Here's a sample from the recruitment ad. As an internment/resettlement specialist for the Army National Guard, you will ensure the smooth running of military confinement/correctional facility or detention/internment facility, similar to those duties conducted by civilian corrections officers. This will require you to know proper procedures and military law, and have the ability to think quickly in high-stress situations. Specific duties may include assisting with supervision and management operations, providing facility security, providing custody, control, supervision, and escort, and counseling individual prisoners in rehabilitative programs. End of ad quote. Yes, FEMA camps are rehabilitative programs, Glenn Beck and other apologists say otherwise. There are specific military documents that demonstrate plans to relocate people into camps. Namely, Army Regulation 210-35, which bears the name Civilian Inmate Labor Program. According to the document, 210-35 provides guidance for establishing and managing civilian inmate labor programs on Army installations. It provides guidance on establishing prison camps on Army installations. The document also makes reference to identifying detainees using their Social Security number. The manual states these operations may be performed as domestic civil support operations, and adds that the authority to approve resettlement such operations within U.S. territories would require a special exception to the Posse Comitatus Act, which can be obtained via the President invoking his executive authority. Under the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878, U.S. military personnel are generally prohibited from assisting in civilian law enforcement functions such as search and seizure, interdiction of vehicles, arrest and interrogation, surveillance, or using force except for in self-defense. Though the Posse Comitatus Act originally referred only to the Army, it was extended in 1956 to include the Air Force. Subsequent DoD regulations prevent the use of the Marine Corps or Navy for civilian law enforcement functions. In 1981, this principle was further codified in 10 U.S. Code 375, which directs the Secretary of Defense to ensure that military activities do not include or permit direct participation by a member of the Army, Navy, Air Force, or Marine Corps in a search, seizure, arrest, or other similar activity, unless participation in such activity by such member is otherwise authorized by law.
This last week, the U.S. Congress passed a bill which repeals Posse Comitatus, which means that we have now institutionalized and codified martial law. Right now, the battle against terrorism involves all of us. Everybody in this country is a potential terrorist. And the words that they use in there to bring everybody in as a potential terrorist is any associated forces, which means that if you happen to visit a website, happen to attend a meeting, happen to do one association, you can be accused of being a terrorist, and the bill says you have no right to a lawyer. They've been abusive of this for many years, but now it's been codified. And this president, just about a year ago, announced that some of these bad people, even though they're American citizens, don't deserve even charges, that they can now be assassinated. We should be consciously aware of terrorism and deal with it, but to say that we're at war with the world and we can send a drone missile and send our troops any place we want is very, very dangerous.
So, back to the manual. Aside from enemy combatants and other classifications of detainees, the manual includes the designation of civilian internees, in other words citizens, who are detained for security reasons, for protection, or because he or she committed an offense against the detaining power. Once the detainees have been processed into the internment camp, the manual explains how they will be indoctrinated, with a particular focus on targeting political dissidents into expressing support for U.S. policies. This is quite similar to the kind of detention centers that used to thrive in Mao's China. They were re-education centers that used forced labor to break down residents, in the interests of turning them toward the greater good. Joseph Stalin sanctioned a similar network of gulags, which is an acronym based on the Russian phrase for the chief administration of corrective labor camps and colonies. Does this sound like the kind of liberty that America's founding fathers guaranteed its citizens? Apply for installment loans and secured loans now. If you think you'll need one, you may not be at liberty to do so later. The re-education process is the responsibility of the Psychological Operations Officer, whose job it is to design PSYOP products that are designed to pacify and acclimate detainees or DCS to accept USIR facility authority and regulations, according to the document. The manual lists the following roles that are designated to the PSYOP team. Identifies malcontents, trained agitators, and political leaders within the facility who may try to organize resistance or create disturbances. Develops and executes indoctrination programs to reduce or remove antagonistic attitudes. Identifies political activists. provides loudspeaker support, such as administrative announcements and facility instructions, when necessary. Helps the military police commander control detainee and DC populations during emergencies. Plans and executes a PSYOP program that produces an understanding and appreciation of U.S. policies and actions. Remember, this is not restricted to insurgents in Iraq who are detained in prison camps. The manual makes it clear that the policies also apply within U.S. territory, under the auspices of the DHS and FEMA. The document adds that resettlement operations may require large groups of civilians to be quartered temporarily, less than 6 months, or semi-permanently, more than 6 months.
We have this map that shows how the U.S. would be divided in the event of an emergency, if we can pull that up there. There it is. So this is how the U.S. will be divided into districts. You see 10 of them there. This is according to the National Emergency Center establishment.
It gives FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security jurisdiction over what goes on in these places during a time of emergency.
The U.S. government is prepared to institute martial law and have practiced for that day numerous times over the years. Politically repressive actions, like the Palmer raids and the McCarthy era, are two examples. From 1967 to 1971, the ED6D list was written. Over 100,000 people are on that list, among them a variety of notable public figures. They are considered subversive and are to be rounded up if the government deems it prudent. The Patriot Act and its focus on Homeland Security brought a news team to the Rex 84 engine. In fact, NORTHCOM was established stateside in 2002 to assist in federal homeland defense efforts. This agency is authorized to monitor the communications of citizens and be a rallying point should it be deemed necessary to mobilize in a Rex 84 type action. Under the indefinite detention provision of the National Defense Authorization Act, with the acronym NDAA, which was signed by Barack Obama on New Year's Eve going into 2012, American citizens can be kidnapped and detained indefinitely without trial. An article by Paul Joseph Watson of Infowars.com states that in September 2012, United States District Court Judge Catherine B. Forrest ruled that the indefinite detention provision of the NDAA was unconstitutional and blocked it permanently. However, within 24 hours of the ruling, the Obama administration lodged an appeal, and the law has been under temporary injunction until now. Americans can once again legally be snatched off the street and detained without trial based on the mere claim that they provided aid or support to terrorists, despite this being a total violation of habeas corpus. The 10th Amendment Center has a detailed breakdown of the ruling. In layman's terms, Forrest put a stop to indefinite detention, and the Second Circuit overturned that. It also permanently prohibited Forrest from attempting to do so again, ordering her to proceed with the case consistent with their opinion. NDAA indefinite detention powers are alive and well. The group points out that the new Second Circuit ruling is completely incorrect because it claims that Section 1021 of the 2012 NDAA says nothing about the government's ability to detain citizens. In reality, Section 1021 states, Congress affirms that the authority of the President to use all necessary and appropriate force pursuant to the authorization for use of military force includes the authority for the armed forces of the United States to detain covered persons, pending disposition under the law of war. The ruling stems out of Hedges v. Obama, a lawsuit filed in January 2012. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Chris Hedges and several other high-profile figures brought the case in order to protest against the potential that the law could be used to harass outspoken journalists and political activists. Sadly, the victory lasted about 10 months. Today, U.S. totalitarianism wins again, laments Zero Hedge. The historical significance of states using internment camps to re-educate detainees centers around the fact that it is almost exclusively practiced by repressive and dictatorial regimes like the former Soviet Union and Stalinist regimes like modern-day North Korea. Here are a few documented preparations for the mass internment of citizens inside America, but this is the first time that language concerning the re-education of detainees, in particular political activists, has cropped up in our research. In 2009, the National Guard posted a number of job opportunities looking for internment/resettlement specialists to work in civilian internee camps within the United States. In December of 2011, it was also revealed that Halliburton subsidiary KBR is seeking subcontractors to staff and outfit emergency environment camps located in 5 regions of the United States. In 2006, KBR was contracted by Homeland Security to build detention centers designed to deal with an emergency influx of immigrants into the U.S., or the rapid development of unspecified new programs that would require large numbers of people to be interned. Rex 84, short for Readiness Exercise 1984, was established under the pretext of a mass exodus of illegal aliens crossing the Mexican/U.S. border, the same pretense used in the language of the KBR request for services. During the Iran-Contra hearings of 1987, which is the clip at the beginning of this video, it was revealed that the program was a secretive scenario and drill developed by the federal government to suspend the Constitution, declare martial law, assign military commanders to take over state and local governments, and detain large numbers of American citizens determined by the government to be national security threats. Despite the fact that the manual is well over 300 pages long, and would take hours to read properly, within minutes of the public becoming aware of its existence, a minority of commenters were claiming that the policies outlined in the document only pertained to foreign combat operations, and did not apply domestically to U.S. citizens. This is similar to the denial witnessed prior to the passage of the NDA when some argued that the indefinite detention provisions did not apply to American citizens, despite numerous legal analysts asserting they did and President Barack Obama himself acknowledging they did when he signed the bill. Let's make one thing clear, the manual primarily deals with enemy combatants captured and detained in foreign prison camps run by the U.S. military. However, another thing that is just as clear from reading the manual in full as the fact that it also applies to citizens detained within the United States, whether they be DCs, displaced citizens, or civilian internees, in other words citizens who are detained for security reasons, for protection, or because he or she committed an offense against the detaining power. Firstly, throughout the manual there are scores of references to how the U.S. Army would work together with the DHS, ICE, and FEMA, page 24, to implement the policies within U.S. territory as part of civil support operations in the aftermath of man-made disasters, accidents, terrorist attacks, and incidents in the U.S. and its territories. Page 38. The handling of DCs, displaced citizens, is also a mission that may be performed in support of disaster relief or other emergencies within the United States or U.S. territories during civil support operations, states page 33. Page 56 also states that it is the responsibility of the PSYOP officer to control detainee and DC populations during emergencies. Resettlement conducted as a part of civil support operations will always be conducted in support of another lead agency, Federal Emergency Management Agency, Department of Homeland Security, states page 37.
Yeah, pretty much at that time, your Second Amendment, all your rights, First Amendment rights, pretty much everything is at that moment just interrupted. Yeah.
So you said that martial law suspends their Second Amendment, so I'm not going to, but would you say we would take weapons from people?
Yeah, that's what they do. Yeah.
That's what they do, but I'm saying...
Yes, I wouldn't agree with that either. I'm the second, I live in the Second Amendment. But
okay.
The section during a moment of martial law, we've lost all control. We're pretty much saying when the military moves in on your street, they are now saying you have no more rights, pretty much you're going in second house. That's like the worst case scenario. So I'm saying when the way they're not looking at it, when the guard is used, that's how it's going to be used.
Yeah.
So we're not going to be out there on the street corner and like, hey, we're here. Unless we're like you're assisting with some kind of event, you're not going to be involved in a riot and not really have any authority to do it.
No, you're not going to go knocking on doors and be like, all right, I need a shotgun. Here. No. You're not going to go up to each house and say...
Well, they did that in Katrina, is why I'm asking. And if we're talking about shit hitting the fan, I'm not going to do it, but...
They're not going to do that necessarily. It's more or less like, hey, go in your house. Shut up, stay there. That's what we do.
Okay.
Because the reason they have martial law in place is it's one of those situations where, like I said, everything's already broken down. It's a last resort to change pretty much your last-ditch effort to put that law and order into that community. That's why they have an actual guard.
Okay.
Good question. I think they did that in Katrina, right? They just don't think that people are done.
Yeah, which I think is bullshit, but.
You're going to claim your right to take a price when you hold their hands?
Yeah.
We're going to get political right now.
The time for denial is over. People spent weeks arguing over the indefinite detention provisions of the National Defense Authorization Act, ignoring assertions by top scholars and legal experts that the kidnapping provisions did apply to U.S. citizens. It appears as though cognitive dissonance is causing some people to desperately search for any way of denying the shocking truth contained in these Army documents. This is particularly prevalent amongst Democrats and liberals whose support for the cult of Barack Obama has blinded them to the fact that his administration is passing legislation which in many cases is far more draconian than anything Bush signed into law. Denying these manifestly provable facts will not make the threat go away. This is not an imaginary monster under the bed. This is yet another piece of the larger pattern of demonization of gun owners, libertarians, conservatives, Christians, and anyone who will not bow down to enslavement by a hijacked government occupied by ruthless tyrants who desire only total control. We've already seen gun confiscations in the wake of Hurricane Katrina in 2005.
No one will be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
It was a human drama with emotions and tensions running high. Patty Connie is still trying to recover physically and emotionally.
They really did a number on me.
From the day police forced her from her home.
It was traumatic. All of a sudden, they were banging on the front door, the side door, and the back door. They said, "Let us in."
Patty tried to explain. She was on dry land, she had plenty of food and water, and didn't want to abandon her dogs. But it didn't matter.
If you see 6 or 8 police that look like linebackers pushing you in a corner, you're in shock. I'm saying, look at all my food. I got plenty of food. They kept pushing me back, and ended up like this.
Then, Patty showed them a small revolver she was carefully holding in the palm of her hand. A camera crew was there to capture what unfolded next.
I said, "It's not even loaded." And I dropped it on the floor.
You got a gun, relax.
Well, they punched me in the face.
Relax now.
Look at my black and blue marks. Look at what they did to me. They dragged me out of here. I really thought they were going to kill me. I really did.
The hijacked U.S. federal government has been meticulously preparing for martial law at a breakneck speed. Another trading manual demonized Americans who embrace individual liberties as potential extremists and even referred to the Founding Fathers as examples of extremists in history. The U.S. Army Civil Disturbance Operations Manual from 2006 broke down how military assets on U.S. soil will be used to confiscate firearms, put down riots, and even kill Americans. This manual listed weapons to be used against American dissidents, including anti-riot grenades, and emphasized that warning shots will not be fired. Earlier this year, Law Enforcement Targets, Inc., a provider of shooting targets to DHS and other federal agencies, sold a line of realistic-looking non-traditional targets of pregnant women, children, and the elderly. One target in particular depicted a pregnant woman standing inside a nursery. These targets are designed to condition law enforcement into shooting these American threats without hesitation. In addition to buying shooting targets of Americans, DHS also bought 2 billion rounds of ammunition for domestic operations throughout 2012. This excessive amount, enough to sustain the war in Iraq for 24 years, will ensure the rapid expansion of the police state during the civil chaos caused by the likely economic collapse of America. We've already seen a police state take over after the Boston bombings, when armored police went door to door to enter and search homes without a warrant. The hijacked federal government is simply shedding our constitutional republic and purging what remains of our liberties, while demonizing anyone who stands in the way. So stand up and be in the way. The government and police are public servants hired to protect and defend our human rights, not to oppress the public they work for. To get more news and information that matters, go to findinfoworld.com or click the link below. Also subscribe to the Find Info World channel and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you for watching and keep freedom in your heart.